On today's podcast, I did a solo podcast with Casey from KaseStyles. The name of the business is kind of a play off of the words case files. It's an event planning, styling, and florals and lifestyle blog business. It's centered in central Wisconsin. We talked about Casey's blog, how she got into becoming a event coordinator, and how she was her own first client, actually. So it was an interesting conversation, and I hope you enjoy this podcast. I'd like to welcome Casey Greenheck to the podcast. Welcome, Casey.
Thank you.
Casey is a wedding planner, and you're a florist too, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, in the Wausau area. Let's just start out. How did you get into this? What made you think of becoming a wedding planner and a florist?
Well, I started my own lifestyle blog about 4 years ago. And when I was planning my wedding, I just loved doing it. And then I realized there wasn't really anyone in the area that really sat with you and kind of walked you through the planning process. You only get married once and you don't really know what you're doing. So I decided that there was kind of a need there, and it was something I love to do. And once I just dove head first and started planning. I started my company before my wedding planning was even done. So I kind of took on a lot, but it was worth it. And then...
So you're your first client?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It was
awesome.
So, I really loved doing not only the planning portion, but the design and just making sure like what the wedding was going to look like. I put together a PDF, and at that time I used a different florist, but had everything laid out exactly what it would look like. I think a lot of brides want to know what their wedding's going to look like before they just walk in and see the space. So that's been very successful as well. And once I got into the design portion of the wedding, I realized florals are such a big impact of that design that I wanted to kind of get my hands on those a bit more. And once I did, I just fell in love with it.
Yeah, the one wedding that we've done together, the planner that you sent, like the what you were just talking about, the PDF, I found very helpful for the day. You know, if I had questions or whatever. Of course, we all know that always changes the day of the wedding. You know, so it's a great guide to start with. I do that with my clients too. Give them like the shot list and what they want for it. So, so you said you've been in business for about three years.
Yep.
Do you have any employees?
I do. I have my colleague Shelby. She helps me out. She's on a per project basis, so she comes to the weddings and helps, and then does some planning on the side. She does have a full-time job, but she's just such a great asset.
I think I remember meeting her. The wedding we did. So you said you started because no one really sat down with people to help them plan. Walk me through what your process is when you meet a client, when they first book with you. How does that work?
Sure. So when the client first books, I send them a questionnaire. I use a subscription called HoneyBook.
Okay.
And that's how
I
I
use
book.
17 Hats.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
It's like one of the same kind
Sure.
of.
Yeah. I really like HoneyBook. I can do my payments through there, do everything kind of through there. So I send them a questionnaire, and they answer everything from, what would your dream wedding look like, your Pinterest board, do you want to do a first look, all these nitty-gritty details that people don't really think about. And once they fill out that questionnaire, I go into a Google Drive document that I created for them. I create a folder, and in that folder there's the planning timeline, and that's kind of where I start. Once I get their questionnaire, I go through the timeline, do all the details we can. That document is a working document that we both can see and work on and share with vendors and everyone. And then once they kind of get a grip on that and realize if it's what they want or how we want to change it, then we go to the design, which also is housed in that same folder. And I kind of work that out in the same way. Not as much of a working document, but I go through and it ends up being like a 6 to 9 page PDF of what are the florals going to look like, what will the ceremony space look like, what will the reception look like. That way everyone's kind of all on the same page. And then in there I have vendor referrals and kind of all the stuff they need. So once they sign up, we really just dive right in and get the planning started.
So are you present for all the other vendor meetings as well once they book with you?
It depends on the client if they want me to be there. I tend to suggest like food tastings that they do kind of as like a date night because it can be really fun.
Wouldn't you want to be there though for the food tasting?
Right? Yeah. It depends. It depends if they want me there or not. But when I did my wedding, I really enjoyed.
Yeah, that was one thing that I enjoyed with my wedding as well. We got married our reception was at the Paper Valley in Appleton.
Oh, sure.
And the how did it go? We showed up and we had like a day planned. Like they gave us the date. We showed up and they said you're not on the books for this date. You know, they completely screwed it up on us. And the manager actually came out and he actually took us through the entire place, showed us around, and you're only supposed to get like these little small like cakes for tasting. He gave us like the full size like tuxedo cake, and me and my wife both had a piece. It was pretty good customer service. So that kind of leads me to my next question: is what is your customer service like? Like, are you only business hours, or if they want to get a hold of you, can they get you outside 8 to 5? What is like that? Like, or, do they own you?
So when I first started, yes, they owned me. As I learned quickly, I needed to set up some boundaries. So I even put in my email signature, my business hours. One of the main things for our customer service, we tend to take on about 15 weddings a year because we really want to hone in on that client, what they want, and really give them as much attention as we can. So during the event, we try to do that. So Friday is blocked off for those events. Monday is blocked off for recovering from those events. And then Tuesday through Thursday is business hours. But we do say, if you have anything that is urgent, text us, those types of things. But I try to keep those boundaries. Otherwise, it's texts in the middle of the night, calls all the time,
Yeah. I do get back to them as soon as I can, even if it is outside of business hours. But you have to create that separation. Otherwise, they will consume your life. Your clients will consume your life, which is, it's not a super bad thing if you like what you're doing, but I'm assuming you got into this job because you liked it and you didn't want to make it something you hated doing.
Exactly, exactly. I try not to, but even like yesterday on Sunday, I was answering emails and when I have questions, especially, I want them to feel comfortable in the process and not feel like they're waiting and waiting and waiting. But a lot of people have kind of, I think, they appreciate that.
If you set that boundary, they understand it right away.
Right.
It's the minute you don't, and then all of a sudden you go, well, I have a life outside of my work. Right. You can't leave me alone. Then they get, and that's completely understandable too. But I found if you set that boundary with them and they understand, it's.
Yeah, a lot of my clients work business hours as well. So we do a lot of meetings in the evening. Yeah. Those things we'll come to the studio and just sit and chat. Some are from out of town. Yeah. So whatever works for their schedule. But those meetings, are set. So those can be set outside of business hours. It's just the communication I try to keep a little bit.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. So are you from the area, the Wausau area?
I am. I grew up in Virginia when I was very young. And then we moved here, I think I was in second grade.
Okay.
So then I grew up in the Weston area, went to college in Arizona. Oh. Lived there for...
Did you go to school? Did you go to school for design or anything?
I did. So I went to the Art Institute of Phoenix for fashion marketing. And did a lot of graphic design, and then I moved to Minneapolis, worked for Anthropology, did some designing and managing there, and met my husband, who happened to be from Wausau, and then ended up back in Wausau.
Kind of back to where you started. That's cool. So, I guess let's get into like the budget part of things. What can you advise people that might be listening to this to set for a wedding budget? It all depends on what their financial situation is, of course, but like what's a good budget to expect, and without really saying numbers, but like what's a good budget, what's a good expectation for a budget if they want to deal with you? Like a higher end budget, what do you usually work with?
I would say probably mid level to higher. We don't tend to do super, $1 million weddings. We haven't gotten to that in this area
you
yet.
Want to though?
Yeah, I'd love to. But I actually really love the small, intimate. I think the events we kind of specialize are the weddings that are more event based and untraditional. I think that has kind of been where our expertise comes in. We can definitely do traditional, but a lot of people have been leaning more towards like hors d'oeuvres and a gala type feel where the guests are very involved rather than the traditional, church break type of event. And that's been really, really nice. I would definitely say budget wise, I would say most people go over their budget. The budget they give me, no, it never ends up being that. I always ask, how close do we need to stay? And I monitor it and I let them know, okay, if you choose these chairs, it's going to bring us over budget. So I keep a close eye on it. I just think people, when they start, don't know exactly what goes into everything. I would say most couples go over their budget by about a third.
Yeah. Yeah. So setting that expectation, I'm sure that's something that you bring up in your first meetings.
Yes. A lot of where we struggle in the design portion is a lot of people go on Pinterest and they see these amazing weddings, but those are $100,000 to $1 million weddings.
Talk to me about Pinterest a little bit too.
Yeah, that's hard. I love Pinterest. We use it a lot.
I have a board. I know. I just never.
Yeah, we're on it a lot. It's a good way to communicate via pictures of what they want. We try not to recreate anything, but just to get a kind of idea.
Good jumping off point.
Yeah, so it's just, I like to see what they like, who they are, what they're into. The hard part is, and this is something that I learned when I worked at Foot Locker, I used to coordinate photo shoots for them, and it's a lot of times in this area, they say, people want a champagne wedding on a beer budget, which is what I tend to find. I think people see these pictures and they're like, I want this. But when you tell them how much that is, we kind of have to reel it in. So I think we are good. It's good to have a designer so that you can have that vision you want, but also stay within your budget. So we're good at finding that middle ground.
Okay, cool. Do you do any type of sketches, like floor plans that you would show them?
We do, yes. So I use InDesign.
Okay.
I do that for the design and the PDF.
With your design background, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, once we get in there and we know guest count, we lay out the tables and how it's going to look, where do we want to change, color, what colors are going to go on what tables, if we're doing some tall stands, some small stands, some candles, we kind of lay out what that's going to look like. Cool.
I was speaking with Fawn, and she was talking about Fawn Mueller. She was on one of our previous podcasts. She talked about all the candles, and then I saw she did a Facebook Live, and I wish I would have asked her about it, but she said there's some sort of legality. If it was a longer candle, you needed to have it enclosed. Is that anything can you explain that to me? Like that, it just tripped my interest for some reason. And I'm like, I wish I would have asked her about that, but now I'm going to ask you about it.
Yeah. So we come across that a lot depending on the venue, but most places do want an enclosed flame. Yeah. And that is because the wax drips onto the tablecloth, and then also people reaching over, if they knock it, it just tends to be a safety hazard.
Yeah, it made sense, and I figured it had to do with safety, but I was just wondering the logistics behind that. A lot of glass faces, if you have hundreds of candles, that could be an issue.
Yeah. And that's one thing that's nice too, working with like a designer or a florist, is a lot of people don't realize, they're like, it's cheaper if I just buy my own. Yeah. Well, then it's storing it, it's cleaning it out. There's a lot of kind of other things that go into that when you're buying your own.
So you brought up cleaning it out, set up. I'm assuming you set up early or the day before. How long do you stay the day of?
So we don't have any parameters. We are there before they're there, and we're there after they leave. So when we are kind of producing the event, so we do florals, and if we're just hired for florals, then we set up and leave. If we're the planners, then we're there the duration. We tend to really just want to make sure that bride and groom don't have to worry about anything. There's little things that don't really get considered, like taking things from the ceremony to the reception. They don't want to have to do that or ask someone to do that. Taking gifts to their hotel room, making sure that after, sometimes people have been drinking and we want to make sure they're stored away.
Yeah.
We're there the entire time. I mean, I think Shelby said one event she got 25,000 steps just at the event that day.
Yes, that is a good point you bring up. Footwear, like, what do you wear? Because you're on your feet all day. I'm on my feet all day. I have a pair of Crocs.
Yeah. We learned the hard way. No heels.
Yeah.
Very comfortable footwear. I bought tennis shoes for the summer. Last year I did more flats, but you're just on your feet the entire time.
I figured out quickly no one's looking at the shoes that I'm wearing.
Yeah.
So the most comfortable pair of, like, they won't be flashy, but like the most comfortable pair of black shoes that I've ever found, I'll just wear them. It doesn't matter.
I think for us, the hard part is we want to be super comfortable, but we are also kind of the face of the couple at the wedding. So everyone, guests are coming up and asking questions, vendors are coming up and asking questions. So we want to look presentable, but we also want to be comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. Like, shoes are easier to get away with than showing up in jeans and a polo, or something like that. Not that I would ever do that, but what was my next question? So is everything locally sourced, locally grown, all for floral arrangements?
So depending on the bride, what the bride wants, if she wants a flower that's kind of out of season or something, I work with a wholesaler out of California.
Okay.
I have a really great relationship with them, and the gal, Sarah, is awesome. And we've become really close. So she knows my style, and I can send her kind of my inspiration. She'll tell me what she would recommend for flowers. Then they ship them straight to the airport, and I pick them up from the airport. They deal with a lot of, I do order from Krieger as well. The wholesaler that I work with in California and Krieger get their flowers from a lot of the same places, which are not local just because of our
climate. Yeah, definitely.
But I do tend to work with some local farms if they have the color palette. That's what's hard, because a lot of them have a very limited selection, and our bride has a color that we're going for, and if it's not that, then we have to go somewhere else.
So does that make the cost a little bit more?
It does.
To outsource it like that?
Yeah.
That's cool. So you said you book 15 weddings a year. How far out are you booking now?
So right now, I would say we just kind of finished out. We have a few openings for 2019, but we're pretty much done booking that. And then now we're booking for 2020. I try not to book too far in advance. I noticed one year I booked, I want to say, a client, and it was 2+ years out. And it was really nice to work with them for that long of a time, but things change so frequently. Their design style change, what they want for the wedding changes. They don't know a lot of those details.
Yeah.
So I would say a year in advance is the ideal situation.
In advance is best. Getting back to, you said you do a lot of blogging. What is your inspiration for the blog posts? Are they about all the weddings, or are you doing other things as well? Or?
I started my blog as a lifestyle blog, and I still try to do that. I haven't been keeping up on it as much as I want, diving into weddings so much. But I do want to start blogging about each wedding and what goes into each wedding and the backstory of everything. I tend not to blog about them right away, because we try to get them featured in other publications, and they won't publish them if they're featured somewhere else. So I wait until that happens. But as far as blogging, I think my portfolio is where all the pictures are housed and where people can see what we do. And then I really want to be able to speak to the behind the scenes part, is what we kind of want to do going forward in 2019.
Yeah. The behind the scenes kind of thing, no one sees it.
Right.
Really, so that's a great idea to do that. Where have you been published before?
We have been published with Style Me Pretty, Wisconsin Bride, Martha, Stewart Weddings, Ruffled blog. We've been published in quite a few more blogs than actual print publication. I have one coming up that will be in print in Wisconsin Bride, so we're excited about that.
That's cool. Do you just service the central Wisconsin area, or do you go other
We'll
places?
definitely travel. We have done weddings in Door County, Appleton, the Twin Cities, Milwaukee. We did one in Camp Wandawega, which is southern Wisconsin. This really like kitschy camp, and it's like a 1920s summer camp. And that was really fun. So we'll definitely travel. I enjoy traveling a lot.
That's awesome. So do you charge extra for travel?
I didn't when I first started. And now depending on the length, if it's still pretty central, if it's like Appleton or it's not too far, we don't. But if it's over 3 hours, we will.
That's having a good radius.
Yeah.
So do you have do you stick to a package list, or is it kind of like a la carte? How is your structure for someone that's looking to book you?
So I do more packages. So I have a set price for full service planning, and I have a set price for event management, which event management we come in like the month of and take their timelines and just refine everything. And then we're there for setup. We run the rehearsal Friday. We stay all through Saturday, take down Sunday. So event management has a price. Full service has a price, but then our design and florals is dependent on the scope of the wedding. So we'll sit down with them, get their design, and price from there.
Okay, so is there anything that you want to plug? Like anything you got coming up, any events, anything like that?
Not really. There's a event I want to say it's in March at the Yawkey House. They do a Flowers in Bloom event, or I think it's called a House in Bloom or Flowers in Bloom in the spring, and florists go in and each get a room that they decorate. That's been something that we've done that's really cool, and I encourage people to see, especially in Wausau when it's snowing. You can go see flowers. And I am not, but they just reached out to me last year and asked me to attend, and we did a bathtub of flowers that got a lot of...
I think I saw that, actually.
Yeah, got a lot of attention, so that was really, really fun. I actually have a print in the studio. And we just love what we do. We love working with the clients. We want to make sure that they get heard, they feel heard, and the wedding is exactly what they want it to be. I think you only do this once, so why not do it right?
Yeah. So where's the best place someone can reach you, follow you?
You can follow me on Instagram. Email is always the best. I encourage that over Facebook. Things kind of get lost in the mix and in Instagram. But Casey at KaseStyles.com, and we are open to discuss if they have questions, need anything, we're there.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
All right, great.